there are plenty of stories, and in very modern times, of monastics who, face the demons in a very literal kind of a way. They see visions. They even get beaten up by demons. That isn't uncommon. But I think what people don't really understand is that a lot of the spiritual warfare is on the everyday things that we don't even think of as spiritual warfare. For instance, every time that I, take the second chocolate chip cookie, every time I think, wow, I'm really getting good at this, look at me, that is spiritual warfare. And it's a much more subtle kind, and it's a kind that therefore we're a lot less serious about. If we're talking and, a demon comes in a very obvious shape, then, I know I need to cross myself and ask God's mercy. But, you reach for the second cookie, and you think, I can't believe that person just did that idiot. And you don't think of that as spiritual warfare. And that's, I think, the great temptation of our time. The demons, they're smart enough to hide. And there's a story, there are variations on this story, but the particular variation I'm thinking of is a monk in the Egyptian desert who has this vision where he sees one demon who's in charge of the whole city of Alexandria. And he's just sort of sitting there. And then there's this one monk, and there's 10,000 demons in his cell. And in our day and age, we're doing pretty much what the demons want us to do. So they would be really stupid to come out in obvious force. So if there's anything that I would like to get across in this, is that where our spiritual warfare is in our day-to-day life of, am I loving the Lord my God with all my heart and soul and mind and strength, and my neighbor as myself? Or am I, just going around my life thinking I'm not really hurting anybody, but just doing what I want to do in a way that is taking me away from God and away from love? The fathers say that it's worse to be possessed by your passions than it is by a demon, and the reason is that possession by passions is in fact a worse form of possession by demons. And I might want to stop here and define passions, because in the context of our culture we tend to use that in a positive sense. But the word passion, it comes from to suffer, and it's and therefore it's a passive passion. It's a passive kind of a thing. It's something that's happening to me. And so when the fathers talk about the passions, this is a big, there's not enough time to get into this whole thing. But when they're using it in the negative sense, which they generally tend to do, they're talking about these bents inside us that are leading us away from God. And there's demons associated with them. There are demons of gluttony. There are demons of pride. There are demons of lust. And if I am putting my effort of mind and will towards thinking about that really good-looking guy, or, I can't believe Sister so-and-so did that, and she knows that, whatever it is, that these dumb things we get into, we're making ourselves homes of demons. There was understood that there was such a thing as mental illness, like at least 300 years before Christ. And the fathers of the church, they don't have a problem with that. the interesting thing is there's one instance in which they say, no, that's not true. This is demonic. It's not mental illness. And it's in the case of something that in English you would translate lunacy. And it's a very complicated thing because these words are used in different ways. But as far as I can see, what they're mainly referring to there is epilepsy-type symptoms that occur in conjunction with the phases of the moon. And almost anywhere where a father addresses the passage of the boy that is sometimes called the lunatic and sometimes called the epileptic, depending which translation you're looking at, they all say, no, that's not mental illness. But nowhere else, when someone mentions mental illness, do they say something like that. And you have people like St. Gregory of Nyssa, who's giving a rather detailed explanation of a type of mental illness that was associated with like fever. It's the word is very close to our word frenzy, and so that's where we get the word frenzy. And he's just very matter of fact that that's a mental illness. The fathers don't have the same classifications of mental illness as we do. You do see symptoms that they talk about that are related to those types of things. So I can't tell you, I can't give you a one-to-one correspondence of, because they didn't think the same way we do. Like, the word syndrome, that's, and that means these things run together. Like not run together like you put, two kinds of things together and they mix, but just they're running together like horses are running together in the same place. And so a lot of their understanding of mental illness was, there are these things that sort of, these are grouped together, these are grouped together. So I can't give you specifics in that regard. But the big thing that I've learned in general, excuse me, is that they were exceedingly compassionate to people with mental illness. And they either expected that everybody else around them was, or that they should be. They were even very compassionate to the demon-possessed, by and large. It was a very, very different attitude than anything we expected to see. There's this, in our exorcism service, there's this beautiful part in this canon where it refers to the person who is being exorcised as the faithful servant of the Theotokos, that's the term for Mary. It means the birth giver of God, and we use that term to shore up our understanding that the one she gave birth to is fully man and fully God. And we love her because she's the mother of our God, of Jesus Christ, who is fully God. But the point of that, though, is there's no condemnation whatsoever. Yes, there are people who get possessed because of things they did, but we all have consequences for what we've done. And a person who got possessed for what they did is not necessarily any worse than anyone else. In the sense that they had listened to demons and agreed with the demons, sure, they were demon possessed. They were, most of them, not demon possessed the way we would understand it. But there's hope for everybody. We have in our tradition saints who had been vicious persecutors, who became great saints. And so, some of them were like doing their jobs, it was like they lived at a time when torture was part of how you, what word am I looking for? If you examine a person that's under arrest. So there were people who were not necessarily bad people, who were, they thought the Christians were bad people, and so they were examining them and they were torturing them. But then there were people who enjoyed it, people who were really hateful and messed up, and some of them repented and became great saints. And so you just never know where somebody is, and that's, I think, an important thing we have to understand is, there is objective reality about this thing is sinful, but there's also the subjective reality. You can be doing really awful things and not fully know what you're doing, and at some point not wanting to be doing it. And you can be going around, doing everything that looks right. I mean, that's the Pharisee and the publican story. So, and the fathers, if St. John Chrysostom were around when Stalin was doing what Stalin was doing and Hitler was doing what Hitler was doing, he would have not minced any words, but he would have been praying for them.